So, good evening, everyone. On behalf of the team Calcutta Comparatists 1919, I take this privilege to warmly welcome you again on our 84th lecture of the lecture series on this platform. Calcutta Comparatists 1919 is an independent forum for research scholars of humanities and social sciences. It carries the legacy of the academic study of Indian languages and literature envisioned by Sir Ashutosh Mukherjee and introduced in 1919 at the University of Calcutta. Later, completely new department was established in 2005, and therefore we are all we belong from that department, and along with other student and research scholars from other department, we create this group, and we are currently organizing online lectures on various interdisciplinary topics to be delivered by academicians and distinguished research scholars of different fields. And along with it, we are organizing a workshop, language learning courses, and also publishing our daily blogs with from prominent research scholar along with us. So these are the various initiatives we are currently running on, and I won't take much time. And since all of you like waiting for like near about 15 minutes, so I now request our member Purvasha to formally introduce our speaker of the day, Professor Kancha Ilaiah Shephard, and proceed to the next session. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Purvasha, over to you.
Still, I would like to say a couple of lines about him. Professor Kancha Ilaiah Shephard worked in the Department of Political Science at Osmania University, Hyderabad. He is also the retired director at the Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy at Maulana Azad National Urdu University and the member of National Research Committee constituted by the Ministry of Social Justice, New Delhi. He is an Ambedkarite, an anti-caste activist, a Shudra intellectual. He is an Indian political theorist and a prolific writer. He is also a Dalit rights activist. Professor Ilaiah Shephard did his MA in political science from Osmania University and he completed his MPhil in political science from Osmania University. He received Mahatma Jyotirao Phule Award, Maniyar Kashiram Smriti Puraskar. He was also a Nehru Fellow between 1994 to 1997. His eminent publications include Why I Am Not a Hindu, a Shudra critic of Hindutva's philosophy, culture, and political economy, published in 1996. God as Political Philosopher, Buddha's Challenge to Brahmanism, published in 2001. Buffalo Nationalism, a critic of spiritual fascism, and others. It's my sheer pleasure to introduce you here, Professor Kancha Ilaiah Shephard. Now you may start your lecture. This virtual floor is yours. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good evening, all those who are on the stream today. I really thank the Calcutta University students for doing an excellent program like this, and particularly in a pandemic like this where the whole educational sector has come to a standstill. I think this is a brilliant idea to share our understanding, our ideas, and discuss, and then continue our educational and academic activities in the country and also in the world. So thank you all once again. Today, I was asked to speak on why I wrote Why I'm Not a Hindu in the early 90s. And after almost 30 years, where are we now? Now, when I wrote this book, the situation in the country at that time was in a volatile condition. There were unstable governments, and in 1990, the then VP Singh government, because of the pressure of the historically oppressed, what constitutionally called the backward classes, pressurized the then central government to implement Mandal Commission report, which was submitted way back in 1980 when Congress government was there. And thereafter, a huge commotion started in the country. The Indian youth were divided into two camps. The pro-reservationist camp, which essentially constituted of the Dalit students, few intellectuals at that time, and the OBC who were included in the reservation. And at that time, from the backward classes, what I broadly call them the Shudra backward class, who were historically agrarian people, artisans. So there were very few in the universities as students and teachers, but I was one among the teaching members working around the civil rights movement in the background of the radical left movement that was very active at that time. Now, mostly academic institutions, whether it was Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, or any other South India. South India was relatively different, but most of the North Indian academic institutions, IITs, IIMs, central universities, the faculty was from 5 communities by and large: the Brahmins, Kayasthas, from Bengal context, the Vaidyas, Khatris, Baniyas, and mainly these communities which had historical education, and much more than that, the English education background, both in foreign universities and Indian universities, were on the faculty. And students, except a few Dalit, what in Bengal context are called Nam-Sudras. And in Bengal, the reservation implementation of Dalits was much less than anywhere else in the country. At that time, Jyoti Basu was chief minister, he was not implementing reservation at all. So the Dalit students and the few OBC students were on the one side, and the Dvijas, the anti-reservation students were on the other side. Now, quite strangely, both BJP and Congress were strong anti-reservation parties at that time. Rajiv Gandhi was alive, and election was just over. So no, it was in this situation. What BJP did was a very unusual thing. They, instead of openly opposing the reservations, started the Mandir issue, and they started organizing people for the Babri Masjid question. Now, Hindutva was being talked about all over. They started Rath Yatras, and then in 1992, Babri Masjid was demolished and a massive, issue broke out. PV Narasimha Rao government, was in a way helpful to all the process at that time. Now, I was one among the very few first generation post-independent period born Shudra OBC coming from a shepherd community who got a teaching position in Osmania University. So I was almost a loner, except 2-3 other OBCs and very few Dalit teachers. But I was very active with the civil rights and Dalit rights movement at that time. Now, what I felt when the whole discussion about Hinduism and Hindutva and dividing the country between the so-called Hindu majority and the Muslim minority on the one side, and organizing students on campuses through the ABVP network. And in Osmania campus, ABVP was a strong organization, no doubt. But what I found in their student networks was that they would never organize meetings of academic type. They would never organize serious lectures. They would never organize book reading sessions. They would never organize intellectual discourses. Rather, they would organize festivals on the campuses constantly, one after the other, one after the other. So I really was surprised. Having come from village, we have our own festivals, but never a Ganapati festival or Sri Ram Navami or a Saraswati Puja. This kind of festivals were not known to us because we have our own village agrarian production related goddesses, gods, and occasional homebound festivals, but the rest of the life is around production and agriculture, cattle economy, artisan situation, and struggle of life on everyday basis. Now, this was a surprise to me. They were talking about nationalism, but hardly anything serious about education. And I hardly came across a student leader from ABVP background who could fluently speak English or engage in debates. But, on this religious issues, raising up slogans, writing on walls, putting flags, saffron. Of course, there were student red flags. On the other side, the radical left-wing student organizations. As they were in Calcutta, at that time they were also in Andhra Pradesh and Hyderabad. So then I thought that this kind of religious discourse is not ours. Having come from a shepherd family, I realized that they are drawing all of us into a mess, about the relationship of the productive communities, the Shudras, with Muslims. Of course, in a state like Hyderabad, where the Muslim Nawab ruled till 1948, there were tensions. We had armed struggle between the Nawab forces and the communists in 1948 till then, for almost 3 years. There were tension areas, no doubt. Muslim rulers were all across down the village administration. Therefore, there was anger, dislike. So at the same time, there was no hatred of religion, even in the villages, or much less in the villages. So now, why are they creating this? And then they are saying all Hindus, the Brahmins, the Banyas, who never eat with us, never mix with us, they were clubbed as one. We had meat food culture, we have fish food culture, we have our own festivals, our own gods, goddesses. Then I thought I must write a book, why I cannot be called a Hindu. If what a Brahmin child, a Brahmin youth, a Brahmin student, a Brahmin teacher, the way they live, even in the universities, the way they think in the villages, in the universities, in production fields, or even in the temples, the way these people don't have the right to priesthood, the right to enter into what we call Garbhagudi, the sanctum sanctorum. And whereas they don't have any link with our gods and goddesses, so I thought we have a huge history of production and spirituality. And I started collecting information. But since most of you are students, I must tell you, in our university atmosphere in the post-colonial discourse situation, that was also a period of postmodernist discourse. And mostly academic language is drawn from Europe and America. So any book writing is conditioned by heavy referencing, footnoting. But if I wanted to write a book on my own historical, civilizational, cultural living processes, along with the communities that make India what it was then, by tilling the land, by looking after animals, by making pots, by making carpentry, ironsmithing, goldsmithing, making barbers shave human body in order to be healthy, fishing. So, Bengal knows how much fish economy is part of the whole life there. But the whole spiritual agenda that RSS BJP was putting on us had nothing to do with production. Never, I tried to read as many books as possible because I was doing a PhD on Gautam Buddha's political thought and basically in ancient Indian location. So I tried to read Vedic literature, Ramayana, Mahabharata. Never production appeared in that. It was mostly wars. Buddhism came from a different spiritual discourse. There were all kinds of political ideas in Gautam Buddha's political thought, and he was not being taught in the universities. Only Kautilya and Manu were taught as great ancient Buddha. I was surprised with that. When I read something on Gautam Buddha's ideas from Ambedkar's writing, I was surprised. How come that these people teach only Manu and Kautilya as thinkers who do not compare anywhere with Plato, Aristotle, or Socrates. Whereas Buddha has much richer thought. So this really took me back to ancient and to the villages. Then I had to venture into a new methodology, which was a torturous course. The methodology was experience as framework of writing. This methodology was in some form being used by feminists at that time. In the 70s in India, the feminist movement caught up from the European Sumandi Buvo and Maria Mais and so on. So they were debating about personal is political and kitchen is a political domain. So I had good feminist friends in Hyderabad, Suzy Taru and Rama Melkote, who was my own supervisor, was a feminist. So I was reading quite a bit of feminism at that time. Then I thought I must venture into a different methodological text. And as a result, I did this book. The new version is on Amazon by the Sage. It was first published by Calcutta Samya Group because no popular publisher was willing to publish a title like this, and an unknown author like me, and this very name of mine. You can see my autobiography, From a Shepherd Boy to an Intellectual. This Kancha Ilaiah is a very disrespected name in the educated Brahminic world. This is considered to be rustic, village, backward Dalit kind of a name. So nobody would publish my book. But fortunately, there was a popular Prakashan publisher, but he could not publish from Mumbai because Maharashtra at that time was being ruled by BJP Shiv Sena in alliance. So they would have attacked the publication office and their industry and so on. So they thought Calcutta is safe because the communist regime would not do that. So the Samya Group, one lady publisher called Mandira Sen, she does books on women's. She has really done a great job by publishing this book. And when the book was published, people started ridiculing me. What is this, a lecturer? I was by then a reader, associate professor. How can a professor write a book like this? And of course, the right-wing attack was massive. Now, the book within 1 year became bestseller, and now it is almost about 22 second edition is in the market, 20 reprints have come, and it is still a bestseller even in the Corona on Amazon. Now, what did I expect from this book when I wrote? The book essentially draws from the rural life, the childhood, the Shudra, OBC, and Dalit marriage system, what in Bengal are called the Shudras and Nam Sudras. And when I was writing, Bengal was refusing to even recognize caste. And quite interestingly, this was translated into many languages, but not into Bengali. Because the communist intellectuals of Bengal refused to recognize this book, refused to engage with it, and the Bengal entire intellectuals refuse to talk about caste, though they have names like Chatterjee, Banerjee, Basu, Mukherjee, Sen, so on. And reservation was not being implemented. There was no Dalit, OBC, Adivasi intellectual group in the Bengal universities. So there was no translation. And my publishers were also surprised that Bengal did not engage with the book because they thought this is anti-secular, anti-democratic, and so on. But now there's a huge repositioning by several of those intellectuals. Now I see a lot of Bengal intellectuals quoting, "Why I'm not a Hindu," in the context of the BJP forcing the caste discourse on Bengal now. And 221 elections in Bengal were conducted on caste lines. The Shudras and non-Shudras came to the forefront, and communist parties got disappeared, who refused to recognize this book, whether it is in Delhi or in South India. Communist Brahmin intellectuals never engaged with this book. And the right-wing people, quite interestingly, the Brahminic forces tried to abuse me, attack me, and in my university tried to create problems. They in fact tried to see that I would be removed from my university, from my job. But we fought back as a collective force. The right-wing Shudras, the RSS activists, some of them read it and started using it for their advantage. So an organization which was anti-reservationist started owning the reservation issue quite substantially by 2014 election. And it was this Brahminic organization which put Narendra Modi, who has an OBC certificate from Gujarat as a chief minister, as the prime ministerial candidate. They were opposing reservation internally, but outward they were saying that we are not against. And in 1996, when I wrote, the OBC vote block was almost nil. They were not as conscious as vote bloc like Muslims. The minority question was critical for Congress. BJP was attacking as a minority group in order to isolate it and construct a majority Hindu fold, but OBC category was coming in their way. And the communists were refusing to recognize the OBC category as both necessary reservation category in the universities, because Indian universities were till 2014, particularly Central universities, Bengal universities, IITs, IIMs, were completely under the control of left liberals who refused to recognize and respect the Shudras as a category, refused to use that word in the literature, refused to write anything on OBCs and Dalits, and refused to implement reservations. So when I wrote this book, there was hardly, even in my own university, my own faculty friends used to be afraid of moving closely with me and talking to me because I wrote a book like Why I'm Not a Hindu. But it got raving reviews, but so strong oppositional reviews. Rajdeep Sardesai attacked it. Incidentally, his wife, uh, uh, Sagarika Ghosh, was a great admirer of the book. And many intellectuals, many journalists tore the book into pieces. What is this nonsense? This dichotomous arguments, this and that. But now they realized Narendra Modi, for oath's sake, as a prime minister, created a dichotomous discourse in Bengal. Therefore, the communist left liberal intellectuals who are from Bengal, who are all over the world, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, Australian universities, and the whole subaltern group, which is headed by Bengalis, Ranajit Gua and Partha Chatterjee and all these people, also thought that this was a meaningless exercise. And when they asked me to write a chapter to their 9th volume, I wrote from this book. First, they refused to publish because there were no footnotes. I said, whom should I put footnote? To the history of Shudras who have produced the food of this nation, from Harappa civilization to present, you have not written anything. How do I quote you then? You have only written about your Mahabharata, your Ramayana, you have written hundreds and thousands of books on Gita, but not a single book on plowing the land, tilling the land, planting the food. And they thought agriculture has no philosophy. Only Vedas have philosophy, and Ramayana has philosophy. Mahabharata, war has philosophy, but not production. My stand was opposite in this book. This book says the whole philosophy of human being, abstraction, the idea of God, emerged out of human engagement with nature and transforming nature into humanly usable, productive, usable commodities. So plants were converted into food. And that is where the philosophy began to take shape, not in Vedas. So way back in Harappa, by the way, Harappa was a man's name adopted to the city at that time, because this name is very popular in Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. Veerappa, Yellappa, Mallappa, and Ayya, Ilaiah. These names were very common in Israel and Harappan city civilization, Ayya and Appa. So they didn't know that. What was Vedic was the global. No. All global civilizations have produced philosophy out of productive engagement with nature. Now that is what this book did. And the whole idea of equality, socialist egalitarianism, welfareism is in the productive communities, not in the Bhadralok Brahminic communities. Because the Bhadralok Brahminic communities survived with property as tomorrow's asset. Therefore, I used a concept in this book, those who live labor as life without being any property for tomorrow, only labor, and those who live leisure as life. And the Brahmins, Banyas, Kayastas, Khatris, Vaidyas, all these people thinking that production is pollution, lived leisure as life. They said reading books is their work, but not teaching the all. They never teach Shudras how to till the land, how to write a book on tilling productivity. No, the books were about war. So the entire Bankim Chandra philosophy, the entire, except Rabindranath mixed up things, but the entire Bengali philosophy was around book producing book. Now I was arguing no intellectual should produce a book out of book. Intellectual should produce a book out of people's life and engagement with labor and production. That is actually essence of Marxism if properly applied to Indian conditions. Neither the Marxists proper nor the subaltern understood this. And they, for example, the subaltern studies put Gandhi as subaltern. But they have never understood Ambedkar or Mahatma Phule or Periyar Ramaswamy Nayakar, who was organizing the masses. Or within Bengal, there could have been number of Shudras and Nam-Shudras. For example, first time India started listening caste names like Mahishyas, who were the top Shudras of Bengal during this election only, and Sadgops and fishermen. Because is it a proper intellectual thing for communist intellectual to leave this entire intellectual place to communal reactionary forces like BJP, RSS? How do you avoid identity of human beings as productive units, as labor units, as caste units? Is not class an identity in itself? If caste is an identity, why not class is not class an identity question? Rich and the poor, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. So why Sadgop is should not be an identity? A Dalit should not be an identity. A tribal should not be an identity. Why only a Bhadralok should be an identity? They didn't understand the implication. And unfortunately, now they are being taught by Modi, who is, in proper university education terms, is only a school graduate and distance mode of BA and MA. Now, what happened to Oxford, Harvard, Cambridge? They stuck in the Brahminic discourses, and why I'm not a Hindu. For example, there is a concept in this, Dalitization. The Bengali intellectuals were using M.N. Srinivas' discourse of Sanskritization. What is this Sanskritization? Who gets Sanskritized? How can Dalits, OBCs, Shudras, whose production is pollution, can become Sanskritized? If they get Sanskritized, India will die of hunger. They should get Dalitized. They should, all Brahmins, Banyas, Kayasthas, Khatris, and so on, should think that all our hands should be soiled and our children should be taught to how to plow, how to plant, how to fish, how to graze cattle. Do you want to be taught by those who say cow urine is a medicine about caste identity? But you don't want to learn from Ambedkar. You don't want to learn from Mahatma Phule. You don't want to learn from Kancha Ilaiah Shephard because I'm first generation, non-Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, educated in a rural university. Is this intellectualism? So by neglecting Ambedkar, by neglecting a book like Why I'm Not a Hindu, not critically engaging with this. They have handed over the country to Narendra Modi now. Now they are worried because the Shudras and Dalits are drawn into hugely an anti-Muslim campaign. They are drawn into not academic institutions, not critical engagement, and these people were never taught English in India. The rural universities, rural colleges, rural schools were left to mend themselves in regional languages. The Communist Party did not introduce English medium into government schools, but they all educated their children in private Christian English medium schools to go to Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge. Now, BJP is using that anti-English ideological frame to confine India within the boundaries of Indian backwardness. There's no medical science. See, they don't have history of science. The history of science should come from the Shudras. But even the Shudras were drawn into their fold. That's how huge Jats, Gujars, Patels are drawn into RSS BJP. Now they are facing a music with formulas first time. The BJP wants to hand over the whole economy to the Bania capitalists because they have financed their elections. Gautam Adani and Ambani and so on. So when I wrote Why I'm Not a Hindu, I wrote it to open an eye that how a first generation Indian whose roots are in Harappan civilization, not in Aryan invasion, whose roots are in soil, agrarian production, animal husbandry, and human civilization building, but not in Vedas and Ramayana and Mahabharata. And who is a real nationalist, a real patriot, because I am a Harappan nationalist, patriot, but not Aryan nationalist. The left liberals, the university intellectuals, simply because they came from non-productive communities, wanted to keep the whole university education under their control. Now they have destroyed India, handed it over to RSS BJP, which is anti-education. Now, how do you compete with Europe now? And most of them went away to Europe. I'm telling most of the Bengali top intellectuals are in America or Europe or Australia. I'm saying this is also not nationalism. Why don't you be here? I'm fighting the battle from my ground. When we brought out our new book, Who are the Shudras? The Shudras' vision for a new path, just now, it is shaking them, shaking the BJP RSS. We are asking Jats, Gujars, Patels, Marathas, even your Namsudras and Shudras to get out of the control of the Brahmin Bania Caste intellectual network and social network and spiritual network. If you are Hindu, you ask for priesthood. You ask for your own books. You ask for equality. God should not be in the form of violence. God for me is equality. So when we brought this book, the left intellectuals, the liberals don't want to engage with them. They say this is caste. This is identity question. And they did not listen to intellectuals because, like us, they thought we are not intellectuals because we didn't go to Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge. How can we go? We came from first generation, from sheep rearing family. My father and mother My grandparents were illiterates for thousands of years. I did not come from a family like Amartya Sen, whose grandfather was a Sanskrit scholar. What is the use of that for me? But my grandfather was a great shepherd who built sheep economy, which is a food. No Sanskrit Pandit taught Shudras any Sanskrit. So what is the use? You did not think of the disconnection between the Shudra productive masses and your Brahmin Banya, Brahmin intellectualism. So now they brought the country to where it is. Now BJP RSS want us to compete with Pakistan. Their entire cadre education is about Muslim civilization. But I want to tell my young students, Muslim civilization in a historical evolutionary process has also not given scientific spirit. And the Hindutva spirit, Hindu culture, Hindu civilization has not given scientific spirit. Two unscientific spirits are competing. BJP wants that. It wants to compete with Pakistan, it wants to compete with Bangladesh, and they have not produced any great science. See, the Hindutva team never built hospitals. From 1925 to now, they have never established a world-class university, even of the private sort. Even the Muslims, who have 3 central universities, never educated even the Shudras. They never built hospitals. And in fact, the first hospital built in India, which is the greatest hospital in India, is a Christian lady who built in Tamil Nadu called Christian Medical College Hospital of Vellore, 1900. They built schools and hospitals. Bengali Brahmins got benefited from them, but they never started schools like that for poor. They never thought poor should learn English like that. So now, from why I'm not a Hindu to the Shudras, vision for a new path, there is a transformation in me. At that time, I said, the Shudra upper layer, the Reddys, Kammas, Jats, Gujars, Patels, let us say your upper layer of Shudras who own some agrarian land and so on. Of course, Bengal situation is different because a lot of people there went into Islam and Bangladesh division and so on and so forth. But the Maishyas and others are still on the agrarian high end. Now, see, in Why I'm Not a Hindu, I wrote this in 1996. I want to read this for your benefit. In the post-1947 period, in the All India context, the Brahmins and the Banyas have acquired hegemony both in politics and in business. Alongside this development, there emerged an All India Neo-Kshatriya social base, which is ideologically aligned with the Brahmin Banyas. The Neo-Kshatriyas I am calling the top Shudras, who were landlords in certain areas, who were regional rulers with regional parties. In Bengal, of course, the regional party is also in the hands of Brahmins and Kayasthas. In a situation that witnessed the total decline of classical Kshatriyas, because the classical Kshatriyas who burned their wives in the funeral pyres, they don't exist much in number in Bengal region. They have some people in Rajasthan and UP, Yogi Adityanath and so on. So the Neo-Kshatriyas found enormous economic and political space for themselves. This is one of the reasons why, in the context of the 1990 post-Mandal assertions of Dalit Bahujan caste, the Neo-Kshatriyas found an entrenched place in Hindutva. The Brahmin Banyas also felt that an ally who has an agrarian base and does not feel totally alienated from Brahminical spirituality is essential to sustain its political, economic, and spiritual power. So they entered there. The alliance of Brahmin Banya and Neo-Kshatriya is being projected as a sort of modernity of India. At that time, that was the situation. Now, what I am saying in this book is the so-called Neo-Kshatriyas did not get that place. After BJP came to power in Delhi, all Shudras, Jats, Gujars, Patels, Marathas have no place in Delhi government. They have not come into central universities. Hardly any professors in JNU, Delhi University, Jadavpur University, Calcutta University, and IITs, IIMs. There are no ambassadors from Sudras. There are no IAS, IPS officers to the top level. There are no intellectuals to write books, no intellectuals to write their own autobiographies. Sardar Patel did not write anything who was top Shudra leader. So now I took a position that Shudras must come out of the Hindutva fold. They should capture English education. Regional languages should be overtaken by English by the Shudra forces. Because without English, you can't defeat this Hippocratic Brahminic intellectualism, whether they live in India or abroad. Total hypocrisy. When hypocrisy is part of intellectualism, no nation grows. So the Shudra upper layer should join their reserved OBC and Dalit forces. Then a new discourse should become, and they should occupy central universities, IITs, IIMs. This whole question of 50% reservation in the Supreme Court has to go. Shudras has to assert that position. And if they are Hindus, they should ask for priesthood, Shankaracharya Pitas, and any big Pita in Bengal, whether it is Kali, whether it is Durga Puja, the Brahmins have the control. Why not Shudras? So because they think that, they are not capable. There is no philosophical consciousness among them. Since there is no philosophy, you don't, philosophy in writing, not that you don't have basic productive philosophy, but in writing, you don't write, you don't assert yourself as a philosopher. God is a philosophical concept, an operative concept. I'm not denying religion. So it is in this context, from why I'm not a Hindu to the Shudras, Vision for a New Path, published by Penguin only last month. It is a bestseller sale. My position is that India, if needs to survive as democracy, if Hindu Rashtra question can be completely set aside by the Brahminic forces handling RSS and BJP. See, Modi is not a philosopher. He will only implement their agenda for his own power longevity. But he can't formulate philosophy. Not as Amit Shah. It is Mohan Bhagwat. It is now Dattatreya Hozabale. They do it. They are all Brahmins. And there is a backup of the Banya business of Gautam Adani, and they don't have any philanthropy. When people are dying in Corona, they did not put any money into that. Indian industrialists spent hardly any money on Corona. They don't. They have no guilt and human love for people. They have love for only money. When a business class has love for money but not life, that class is destructive. When a philosophical group is hypocritic, that intellectuals are destructive. So the only hope is that from field to university, from shepherding to university, from barbering to university, from pot making to university, there must be a back and forth. And let the Brahmin Banya Kayasthas also get back to production. 3,000 years, they don't know what it is. So you can't live for so long, eat and survive, and that to better food, and without knowing what production is. This is very dangerous. India cannot reach China by any means because China believes in agriculturalist philosophy. From 7th century onwards, from Taoism to Confucianism, there was agriculturalism, there was human equality idea there in the social and spiritual realm. There was Buddhism there. So how do you challenge it? And I don't want to compromise on democracy. I'm not saying you become like China, a communist country. No. Now I've realized if communism comes in the hands of Brahmins, again we will be slaves much worse. That's a very bad thinking now. So that's the reason why communist parties are getting completely out of existence. They will not be there in India after some time because the Brahmin intellectuals have virtually killed them. But we'll have to sustain socialist welfareism through democratic means in India. So that is the idea from I am not a Hindu to the Shudra vision for a new path. The discourse has come to this level. We are now in a very bad historical stage. If all the intellectuals of all castes do not look back to Buddha, Mahatma Phule, Ambedkar, and what we are saying, I'm not great like Ambedkar or Phule or Buddha, but I'm saying something solid. I want them to look this and join hands with us in changing this whole structure of universities and making English as Indian language. Every October 5th, we celebrate Indian English Day because English is already Indian now. They should not be under the impression they can tell Shudras and Dalits and Adivasis English is a colonial language and the Brahmin, Banya, Kayastha, Khatris keep studying in English. This is nonsense and hypocrisy. So English is Indian. Andhra Pradesh government has already made all schools English medium. All schools from LKG to 12th. This should be the pattern in all states in India. You young people must take this message. We have not chosen our caste when we were born, nor we have chosen our parents, nor we have chosen this land to be our land, but we are born where we are. But this land must be made equally capable like America or Europe for our future generations. And in the coming times, our children's future will be in much more darker days. If the present Hindutva ideology keeps flourishing and the left liberal intellectuals not joining hands with us and understanding production is not pollution, Shudra is not a humiliating term, not a regressive term. Shudra means production. Shudra means equality. Shudra means human dignity, like black is beautiful. Dalit is castelessness, non-untouchable. Everybody should be equal. Everybody should eat, live, intermarry, and then India should be a future great nation. I'll stop here. I can take questions.
Sir, hello, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. This was a splendid and a very enriching lecture. Thank you so much for this lecture. Sir, then we have many comments and questions in the YouTube chat box. So, should we proceed to that?
Now, what you do is, if they are directly asking, let them ask. Otherwise, you tell me what those questions are, I'll answer.
Okay, sir. Surely. And also, Professor, welcome to Kolkata. I mean, to this Calcutta academic space, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. We are honored to have you actually. Yes, so there are many questions actually. We have some comments.
Yeah, first read the comments.
Yes, sir. We have a comment from Labuni Shorkar. She's saying the concept Sanskritization not only helps Dalits but it also helps all human beings. It is a continuous process to upgrade human being from one status to another.
Okay.
So, do you have
yeah, see, my observation is Sanskrit is a language. How does Sanskritization, that means people learning a language, which is already dead in India? It is not a kitchen language, it is not a field production language, it is only a classical Hindu scriptural mantra and mantric language. So we have a great debate on this. When you don't look back to production, but if you go towards production is being treated as pollution, you don't upgrade yourself, you only downgrade yourself. That is not our position.
And yes, sir, on context of our comment, Biplav Kumar Gautam has also said that the moment you are Sanskritized, you lose your own identity. And if you don't have your own identity, if you don't assert your Dalithood, what's the use of this Sanskritization?
Yeah. Okay, I don't want to say much on that. Okay.
Okay, sir. The next
Sir,
question.
I just want to ask one thing in this regard. I think, sir, the caste is very rigid a thing. So, in this case of Sanskritization, is one's caste is changed? I think it's not that.
No,
It's just a
see,
process.
M.N. Srinivas, when he formulated this idea, he is from Karnataka and a South Indian Brahmin educated in Cambridge. See, he thought that Hinduism will become an equal religion in every sphere. It may abolish caste. But he himself says vegetarianism is pure and meatarianism is impure. Now, by that means, all the Bengalis who eat fish, or several Bengali Brahmins, Kayasthas eat meat also. They are impure people according to Sanskritization. Leave alone the Shudras and South India. This it doesn't work. They were trying to appease the intellectual group in their own universities. Mostly Brahmins were there as teachers at that time. They never understood what Ambedkar was arguing. Please go to Mahatma Phule's book called Gulamgiri, Slavery, written in 1870. What he said about human change and the comparative statement between of American blacks and Indian Shudras and Atishudras. and also go to Ambedkar's Annihilation of Caste, written much earlier than this Sanskritization thesis of sociology. They never read it. So, ignorance cannot be a knowledge. Book is not total knowledge, but production field is a holistic knowledge. That can be brought into book. Book can aid production. So if all the universities are closed, still people can produce food. That's what happened in Corona time. If production is stopped, nobody will survive, right? We are all closed in the Corona situation, schools, colleges. But agriculture is going on, fishing is going on, animal husbandry is going on. So what is primary and what is secondary? So the Brahmin intellectual thought book is primary, field production is secondary. This is absolutely putting the whole dialectics, what we call Hegelian dialectics, upside down. That's absolute. That's what Marx said. If you put dialectics on head, this is what happens. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Kinshuk, do you have any more questions?
Thank you so much. Sir. Yes, I have just posted the questions in the chat box.
Yes,
Can you
I
just
will.
please show it?
Yeah, let more
Yes,
people
yes.
come in. Let us see what.
Yes, sir. The next question is from
Yes,
Arvind Deva. He wants to know what are your some upcoming books, some books you're writing that will be published later in this year or next year, maybe.
Well, my energies to sit and write is weakening because now I am 68 and running 69. My latest book is I have worked with a small young team. This Karthik Raja Kurupaswamy, who edited this book, is still a PhD scholar in JNU. And most of the authors in this are still students in different universities and young lecturers. I would think I just finished last year, 1.5 years back, my autobiography, From a Shepherd Boy to Intellectual. Then I would think of researching, if my energies allow me, why Islamic civilization also did not think of abolishing caste before the colonial period. Why they did not teach Shudras, why they did not teach Persian language to Dalits, why they did not bother about untouchability. They were, of course, the convergence. But conversion should not be the only solution for any human equality. For example, the Christians taught education in schools where they established the Christian names without thinking of conversion. If they were to link English education to conversion, all Bengal Brahmins, Kaistas and Khatris would have been by now Christians. But they didn't think so. So why Islamic culture failed in this, then gave the scope to, it is not the question of culture conversion, but the question of thinking economic, spiritual. And secondly, why are they not thinking that women's labor has to be deployed on production like the Shudra and Dalit OBC women do? Why they gave scope to BJP government to think of triple talaq law and so on and so forth? There is a fundamental problem there, I see. Maybe I'll work around that, and I write a lot on Wire and occasionally Indian Express and Scroll, The Citizen, and so on. I'm writing a series of essays on the Shudras. I wrote a major essay on agriculturalism in India, comparing China and Indian agricultural philosophy. And then Shudra civilization. These are essays, if you just type my name, Kancha Ilaiah Shephard, a lot of essays which are yet unpublished into book forms will come. Yeah, I do as much as writing possible, and Karuna has taken a lot of all of our energies. The very terror that it created destroyed our spirit also. But still, I worked during this period, and I worked on my grandmother's strategy after my grandfather died of pandemic in 1897. How she took her sheep and then survived in the forest and rebuilt village economy. I wrote that as a big chapter to my autobiography, which will be added to that in few days. So let me do as much as possible, but I want to speak as much as possible to young people like you and make you read my work and a talk, critique. I'm very open about it.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is from Arup Monjol. Arup is asking, sir, do you think that there are some Dalits who have already secured an established position in society, have a tendency to emulate Brahmanical culture and tradition and dissociate from their own culture?
Yeah, there are such number of people in bureaucracy, in academia. What happens for I have gone through various steps of my life. What happens for first generation rural labor or uh, poor communities, village illiterate families coming into higher education, jobs, civil service. They want to survive in the existing environment. And unlike even the blacks have a lot of space in America, even in South Africa, when whites were ruling, in the church. The church was not discriminating them. Dalits have a discrimination in temples, in universities, untouchability is vocally in practice. So those who came up into structures think that they should remain silent and survive for their day-to-day existence and be competent in that minimum field. That's a very weak strategy, but it is very normal for people to to imitate the rich, to imitate the Brahmin by names, by tilak, by education. So that has done a lot of damage. A lot of intellectual energy has not come. But in fact, if you reflect back, in the Naxalite movement, even in Bengal, communist movement, more Dalit talent got destroyed without contributing creatively than in other fields. They were used as activists, never allowed to become intellectuals, and they have no name, no fame, nothing. And they carried simply the agendas and pasted posters on the walls and died. That was a very bad communism Indian Brahmins, the Bhadralok implemented. I think that was the biggest loss, intellectual loss we have created. The best brains have gone there and they have died without creating.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. The next question is from Biplav Kumar Gautam. Biplav is asking, Brahmins have written mythologies in their own way, and you also came up with your own views on Ravana and Indra. Consequently, we as readers get confused in terms of authenticity. He's asking that, and you have also shown how Ravana was a Shudra and Indra is a destroyer of untouchables. And he's saying such mythical narratives keeps on changing time and again. So he is asking that as readers, where do you unlike where is the what is the source of your knowledge or the source Which source you have taken for saying that way? That
Yeah, it's a very good question, actually. See, any writing has a tendency to mythify certain things or narrativize certain things which uh, may have existed or may not have existed. But take one comparison. In my autobiography, there is a chapter called My Experiment with Untruth. And you know that Gandhi's autobiography title is My Experiments with Truth.
much.
Right? So Gandhi, in that autobiography, writes that when he was 18, one of his Muslim friends told him that in order to become strong, he should eat meat. So by then he was father of one child also, because he got married at the age of 13 or so. So one day he ate goat meat. So Gandhi says, after I ate goat meat, the whole night I felt the goat was crying in my stomach. I did not sleep. And he wrote this and then essentialized vegetarianism as Indian nationalist ethic. And to, prove that he refers to many Vedic, this and that in many other places. Then what I said was, by 18th year, I must have minimum eaten 18 goats. And no single goat cried in my stomach. All those goats got digested. They became part of my blood and flesh. Now, in these two comparisons, which is truth and which is untruth? What Gandhi said was truth or what I said was truth? Does a goat reunite in your stomach? Or Bengalis feeling that all fish are reuniting and floating in the stomach again? See, this is what Gandhi's myth is, but nation believed. So I compared another thing. Amartya Sen says that my grandfather was a great Sanskrit scholar. He taught me Sanskrit. I said, my grandfather was a shepherd, and he died by the time I was a child, long time back. But my father taught me how to midwife a delivering sheep when I was a child going along with my sheep. So was this not knowledge? Was this not great thinking? See, recently there is one writer you all must have heard, Devdutt Patnaik, writes on mythology. He says why Brahmins were exempted from getting killed in ancient India. He says Brahmins were only people memorizing Vedas, and Vedas were not in written form, but they were in their memory form. So their brains were like a library. If any Brahmin is killed, a library is killed. Now, if Brahmin brain is library, what was the brain of Shudras? How much production knowledge each Shudra brain had? What seed should be planted, where it should be planted, how it should be planted, how harvest should be done, how is the barber taught to his son or daughter, mother taught her daughter how to deliver babies? Was this brain not a library? So only book is library. The only Vedic memory is library, is it? This is nonsense. And Times of India publishes, people believe that, oh, really, Brahmin brain was library, killing a Brahmin. Shudra, you can kill any number of Shudras, it is not a library, therefore you can kill. Killing Shudra brain is killing production. One grain, a Shudra can make 100 grains out of one grain. That is a great brain. All science is dependent on nature and production. You would kill all the science there. So what is the carpentry science? What is the ironsmithing? What is pot making? What is irrigation? You read my book called Post-Hindu India, Unknown Engineers. The doctors, social doctors, barbers. See, this is all myth they wrote vis-a-vis the real scientific knowledge of production. So you have to draw a line at one place. Whether I write, they write. Whether production is central in discourse, even in relation to God and people or not. If some book is telling about stories of war, don't take it very seriously. So that is the line you can draw. You don't believe me also. Don't trust my books. Question it. Go back to your field. Verify it.
So also you have, in this context, you have also said about that vegetarianism is anti-nationalism. So when you have have you experienced like strong opposition views or like
Oh yeah,
threats?
very much. When I made this speech in Lucknow University, and I said I have to defeat China and Pakistan, and my soldiers and my people should be strong. Now, can they go by eating, dal, biri, bendi, all this, and then fight with Pakistanis on the cold Himalayan region? Or they should eat whether meat or beef or fish to fight them, because they are eating a lot. And can our people fight them with yoga? They will come with karate. So I said, India has to eat multiple plural food. Vegetarian is part of everybody's life. Don't I know what taste is dal, what taste is this vegetable, that leaf curry? We all eat all that. But we also eat meat, we also eat eggs, we also eat pork. So if a nation becomes pure vegetarian, Jains are pure vegetarians. They don't till the land, thinking that tilling the land is also violence. Then can a Jain nation survive without tilling the land, without produce? Who said that if you till land, you will kill all insects? No, you will create life there. A plant is alive. Insects don't get killed. You read my autobiography. Where I saw in my childhood, when you till the land, along with the furrow, red insects come out in hundreds. I never saw a single insect getting killed in that furrow. No, this is all absolute myth and nonsense. And imagine only this theory of food vegetarianism and meatarianism separate only in India. Everywhere in the world, food is food. Some individuals may like this, some may not like that, for time being or for lifetime. This division of food in how can people say that God is a vegetarian? I'm surprised. What is the theoretical basis of this? So such a thing will destroy the nation. They opposed and they wrote all rubbish things on social media, and they several times they threatened. They said we will kill this, and I said you kill me. I mean, I'm prepared to be killed to tell the truth. What you consider to be untruth, but I'm prepared. So I think, to write honest social science and philosophy in India, you have to be prepared to face these people. My book was taken to Supreme Court, Post-Hindu India, a chapter in that called Social Smugglers. And the three judge bench headed by Chief Justice said, no, this book cannot be banned. You read and write a reply to that. So we are hopeful that our judiciary, our institutions, and young students like you, when Delhi University, BJP intellectuals wanted my books to be banned, but all students, except few ABVP students, Patel, Jats, Gujars, even girls, many Brahmin girls, Banya girls came in support of my books. I said, he is writing about patriarchy and democracy. What is wrong with it? Production and non-production. What is wrong with it? You write counter book. We will read all books. How can you ban books? So students are really big support. Women are big support. So they see parallel in this. Yeah.
Sir, okay, the next question is from Pritam Das. It's a thought-provoking lecture by Professor Ilaiah, as always. I would like to ask Sir about his thoughts on how the process of colonization affected the caste system in India.
Well, colonization has a two-way impact. The British colonization. There are too many colonizations for us. One is the Brahminic colonization of mind of all productive communities and women. That has stunted our intellectual growth as a collective mass. Then came the kind of Islam that came to India also did not engage with scientific spirit of spiritual discourse, open discourse. For example, I was asking, when I wrote Why I'm Not a Hindu, a lot of people asked, what do you want? You are already a professor. I said, if I'm a Hindu, I want to become a head priest of Tirupati temple, because that is a very rich temple. Every day, 14 to 20 crore rupees come to the hundi. I said, do you know Sanskrit to become a priest? I said, does God understand only Sanskrit? One can speak to God in English also. So this conditioning Hindu gods with Sanskrit has damaged the spiritual. Similarly, Islam conditioning the spiritual thought with Arabic has completely narrowed them and conditioned their mind. So in the rural areas, Shudras have people's language engagement with gods and goddesses. Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, even tribal languages. So God is assumed in the Shudra civilization as multilingual. If you think that God created languages, God created all languages then. He or she understands all languages. So this colonization of mind through linguistics, one-dimensional spiritualization has a long impact. Then the British came. British, in one sense, opened the mind. They introduced English education and said any child, irrespective of caste, can study. That is where the first Shudra, Mahatma Phule, and his wife became the first teacher, women teacher of India, and he got educated in English first. Till then, Shudras had no right to go to school, Gurukula or anything. Even in Bengal, Shudras and non-Shudras had no right till late Renaissance period. They tell all stories, but that is bunkum. So that one opening was there, but the other was labor conditioning and exploitation was massive. Because Indian labor wealth, or the wealth that produced by the Shudra Dalit labor, in fact, the Brahmin collusion with colonialism was quite significant. When Muslim rulers were there, Brahmin Pandits learned Persian and were in their courtyard. And when the British were there, for example, Raja Ram Mohan Rai learned from English, from British officials, and more particularly from William Carey before the school started here, and went to England. And there was the reform question from his own point of view about the Brahmin women. Pule started the other. So colonialism is not just, as the left liberal intellectuals tried to interpret, was completely one-dimensional. It went both ways. That is the reason why both Pule and Raja Ram Mohan Rai were in support of the British schools and governments. Whereas Bankim Chandra was in opposition, Ravindranath was engaging with them. So I would say Ambedkar was a byproduct of the British education. If British were not there, he would not have been allowed to survive the way he did. Mandal there, Bhupendra Mandal there. No, Mandal, that who was a Dalit leader in Bengal. It had two ways, but the other things were one-way controls.
In Bengal, we can also think of Gurjat Thakur, who supported the British government.
Yeah, there were many who supported. In fact, see, after the missionaries came, when William Carey landed there in 1791 or so, there was no notion of education. Even Bengali language was very backward. It was he who wrote a Bengali dictionary. And he taught, he introduced English medium. The presidency school was started by him and Raja Ram Mohan Rai for Brahmin children to start with. So, and the whole educational agenda is set up was for liberation. That university is set up now. So William Carey. So it had two-way process. And we drawn into global discourses, theory. But the only thing I don't like now is reading more Greek thought, but not reading ancient India. Reading more European thought. Reading 10 books of Europe or America and writing a 11th book by quoting from that, what I call lift irrigation research. I think that is absolutely meaningless. We have to study our people and write books.
Oh, sorry, sir, I was muted. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Sir, should we take some more questions, if you
Yes.
permit?
Yeah,
Okay,
no.
sir. Okay, sir. So Sheikh Nijamatullah is asking, he is reading the Republic of Hindutva, where the author shows that how the Dalit is converted into right-wing politics. So how we are going to address this issue?
Well, I know that book and I read its introduction and no, this Badri Narayan is actually from a Tiwari background. Has done some research on Kanshiram's Dalit movement and so on. Now is writing in a way pro-Hindutva, positive expansion of Hindutva into Dalits and so on. But my feeling is, what is positive of their philosophy? Did RSS give up Brahminic nationalism? For example, I have been asking them, challenging them on TV channels and so on. Do you ask, can Mohan Bhagwat today issue a statement that any Hindu, whom they describe as Hindu, whether they are born in a Dalit family or an OBC family, a Shudra family or a Caste or Brahmin or Banya family, can they become priests in Hindu temples, in the Ram temple? So why don't they ask they can and make them? See, a Dalit becoming Rashtrapati is not because of RSS manifesto. It is because of Ambedkar's constitution, or not because of Vedas or Upanishads. According to Vedas, Upanishads, only a Kshatriya with a Brahmin coronation can become king. Even Shivaji had to do that, any Shudra king. And in every Shudra state, there would be a Brahmin prime minister, a Brahmin chief priest. That was Hindu Rashtra. So Narendra Modi could not have become prime minister, but for the present constitution, he could not have become RSS chief. That he knows. Though he comes from what is known as Mod Ganchi family, he could not. But he became prime minister because of this. So what is he saying? That Dalits are getting co-opted into what? So yes, some power, some space, and earlier they were not being allowed to eat together and eat. Now they may be eating. But there is a very fine book called, written by Meghvamshi, I Could Not Be a Hindu, who was an RSS activist, who tells exactly the opposite story. That's a bestseller now, published by Navayana. So this Badri Narayan Tiwari is telling his inner view now through this book. Earlier he was talking about Dalits, this and that, and he was saying that I'm a left liberal and all that. But I don't agree with that kind of. See, certainly people would go into BJP when they are giving some minister positions, or if they have for chief minister, because of the constitution. Because they have votes and because they have labor. But did RSS change the labor relations? Did RSS change that the Brahmin, Banya, Kayastha, Khatris can become productive force, labor in the villages, and the Dalits can become priests? They are not saying that. Where is that statement? Let me know. Where is he quoting any change in RSS from the original Hindu Varnadharma theory that Hegdevar, Golwalkar, all of them put together? I don't think there is any change.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we have a question. We'll take two questions together because it's from Bengal Dalits. We have Laboni Shorkar. She's saying that in Bengal, Dalit writers have different points of view and their ideology are different. Some say Dalits are scheduled caste and some say Dalits are those who have no history. On the other hand, Shoibal Das is saying that Bengal is utterly casteist. It shows its bright face with an equalitarian value, but actually it is the opposite. What are your thoughts on Bengal and its Bhadralok casteism?
Well, from Bengal, few Dalit writers have been coming out. I know a friend of mine who was a civil servant called S.K. Bishwas, who was writing history and
Atul Krishna
research.
Bishwas.
Yeah. Then recently, this the man Baipari, Manoranjan Baipari, he has now become, I think, MLA in Trunamol, right? So he has been writing his experience. But unfortunately, in comparison with the Bengal intellectuals from Renaissance period, from the Bhadralok communities, both men and women, hardly any Dalit writers came up. Dalit writers' largest number came from Maharashtra because of Phule Ambedkar's influence. But Bengal has produced very few. One of the reasons is
Hello. Yes. Can you hear us? Prabhasha, can you hear us?
Nothing.
I think there's some network issue. Please bear with us for a few seconds. Sir, I think there's some network issues. Should I try to contact him? Yes, I think he left because of some network issues. Please bear with us. I'll try to contact him by meantime.
hello.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
sir.
he's
Yes, sir. You're
here.
back, sir. Back, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Left again. Yeah, he's trying to rejoin. That room to screen. Yes, sir. We can hear you,
Yeah,
sir.
can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We can see and hear you.
Yeah, my internet has gone. I came on phone now.
Okay, sir.
The Bengal Dalits did not emerge as intellectuals because the left liberalism, the Bengal Renaissance, did not allow many Dalits to come into English medium education. See, this regional language intellectualism does not allow national, international space. Now translations are coming and so on. Even now in the rural areas, Bengal Dalit population is just 7%. But even the Shudras, for example, are not many intellectuals from Bengal. So that is because there is a deceptive role played by left liberal intellectualism from Bengal. They assumed that they represented everybody, which is not correct. You can't represent like that in a caste society. So they did not recognize caste, caste identity, and they did not allow Shudras and Dalits emerge as intellectuals. There are no reserved professors in universities in Bengal, in English literature, even in Jadavpur University. I saw that there are hardly a few people from these communities. Where do intellectuals come from? They should come from university.
Yes, sir.
He's frozen, I think.
Sir, can you hear us, sir?
Yeah, there is some disconnection.
Yes, sir. There's some network issues.
Yes.
Aratrika, you
Yes,
are
sir.
okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We can see and
Okay,
hear
then
you,
you
sir.
can ask 2 questions to close. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So should we continue then?
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Pritam Das has another question that he's asking. Was English education successful in creating an even playing field for lower caste individuals? Would you have had an Ambedkar without English education? Did colonization
Yeah. See, that's what
reproduce?
my
Yeah.
campaign agenda is. All government schools in India should teach only 2 language education, English as the medium of instruction and one regional language as a compulsory learning language. So the whole of India, from tribal areas, Dalit localities to urban centers, all young people should be able to speak English as a common national language and communicate within their own regions, production areas, in their own state language. So our education policy has to completely shift now. Because we can't remove English from India because of its international and national importance. So lot of movements need to be organized for what I call working on two-leg education, English and regional language. And every child, girl and boy, should minimum have education from LKG to 12th in their own village schools in English medium. Then women's liberation also really catches up quite fast. And we are trying in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and the change is very perceptive. I have started an English medium school in my own village for poorest of the poor. Enormous change I could see in the village. Children speak good English, they're going upwards and so on in the villages.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great thing you're doing, sir. And Kane Murthy is asking, sir, OBCs are making attacks on Dalits. In this situation, the book Why I'm Not a Hindu, will that change the mindset of OBCs to work with the other caste or tribes?
Yeah. See, for that, we have suggested ways and means in the Shudra book. In the Shudra book, what we are saying is for there is a chapter called Shudra Consciousness and Future of Indian Nation by Manikanta Palikonda. In that, there is a formulation. What we said is the Indian society is like this. The Dalits are the root of the society. The Shudras, OBCs, and so on, are the branch. The Bhadralok, Brahmins, Banyas, Kayasthas are the leaves and the top portion. Now, Shudras must understand without branch, without roots, there cannot be branch. So they should align with the Dalits rather than with the leaves on the top. And the Brahmins and Bhadralok should understand that without a production root, being equal at every level, highly educated as anybody else, a nation cannot develop. So the atrocities can be controlled only when the Shudra OBCs philosophically reorient themselves towards the Dalits as equal human beings, socially, economically, and productive and spiritual. And that campaign we should take up in the universities. So the Shudra's book has several passages which tell Shudras only that you are being used as a muzzle power by the Bhadralok and also Hindutva to attack Dalits and also sometimes Muslims, as it happened in many cases. But you are not in the intellectual domain. You are not formulating their idea. So you have to stop this and become intellectual. Once, see, unless I am an intellectual, how to write books and talk to people like you, hundreds from a distant place? If I'm a shepherd living in the village, I would not have spoken in English to so many states, so many youth across the world like this. So, we have to learn a global language in this present 21st century. And every Indian child should learn that and become thinkers, treat every human being as equal. And spiritually, we should say equality is God. We respect God who created all human beings equal, wherever such God is. Not that God who created Brahmins from head, Kshatriyas from shoulders, Vaishyas from thighs, Shudras from feet, and not that God who says Dalits are not created by him at all. No, that's wrong God. So we have to reorient our entire philosophy.
Yes, sir. We have a question from Siva. Shiva is asking, sir, are tribes and Dalit same, or can we use the term Dalit to refer to tribe? Please clarify the term.
No, that cannot be. I have told that in the introduction why I am not a Hindu. In Dalit Bahujan, I am not including tribes because tribes are a different category. They need to have a different focus. So we need to engage with Indian tribes with their own identity, their own culture. So we cannot club everybody and then submerge certain groups into that. Okay, all people may not come up in the same way in one group, but we should first address the group as it exists as an identity. Tribes are different.
And sir, it's I think a related question to language. If sir, Srinivas is asking, Pali language was the Mool Nivasis language. Can we start promoting Pali and English to be the language to be learned by all the Shudras?
No, see, the greatness of a language is not the issue in the ancient times or what is ours, what is somebody else. A language that we should hang on and learn today should have highest number of vocabulary of words, which should be communicative to the whole world, which should encompass the whole science development. Pali or Sanskrit or Telugu, simply because my mother spoke, my grandmother spoke, should not be our sentiment. Take, for example, English has a vocabulary of 50,000 words and more. Even Bengali, Tamil, which are relatively better developed languages, have hardly 15 to 20,000 vocabulary. So we can't hang around as a Pali or we should not be sentimental about this. Our nationalism should be around production and the space where we live, no doubt. But cultures keep changing, languages change. Any language which is used by more people will submerge the small language of smaller people. We should not be sentimental. I'm not sentimental about Telugu. Let it die, doesn't matter. So we should overcome. Yeah, I'll take one more question and now, 2 hours amplified.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
Ethic.
sir. We'll go to the last question then. We have a question related to gender. Both Arup Monjol and Laboni Sarkar is asking, what is your take on Dalit women oppressed by Dalit men?
No,
And how do you
in my
relate?
Why I'm not a Hindu. Yeah, yeah. In Why I'm Not a Hindu, in the last chapter called Dalitization, I formulated Indian patriarchies into two. One is the Dalit democratic patriarchy, where men and women work equal in the fields, millions and millions. And there is a patriarchal control, husband beating wife and controlling, but wife has certain space to make it public and so on. Upbringing children on her own, earning on her own. There is a Brahminic authoritarian patriarchy. Women had no space except house. So you must use the open space available for liberation of women in the Dalit patriarchy. From there you can take forward. But Brahmin patriarchy is completely negative. So we should use universal methods, education, man woman equal work. That is where we should also tell Muslims, you have to allow all your women to come into open work. If you stop 50% of labor force at home without allowing, that is not good for us and you. And that is very useful for Hindutva people to adopt. So we need to educate ourselves, study. There is a chapter in my post-Hindu India book called Subaltern Feminist. It is a chapter called Subaltern Feminist. Please, all of you, read that in post-Hindu India. I examined the Dhobi life, how men and women wash clothes of all people. Only one community in the. So there are a lot of positive things there for women's equality, women's sexuality, and so on. So we need to experiment so many things. There is no. Now more Brahmin women are educated, getting employed in public spaces, asserting equality, diversity. We should take from them as well. So this is a long process that we need to, but we must draw a lot of understanding from our rural, productive, egalitarian man-woman relations. I am not a Hindu has quite a bit of such examples and
Yes, sir.
models, but all of you should write more and more. Okay, thank you for this, and I'm really happy today because I hardly spoke to students coming from Bengal region, except in JNU, some of them in Delhi University. But now that you organize from Calcutta, this is a great opportunity for me to share my views with you all, young people, girls and boys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We are so honored to have you. We have read your books a long time back, and like we are kind of it's a fan moment for us also. And sir, before ending I will ask Pratim to give the vote of thanks. But I just have sir one query. Like you have in your book, Why I'm Not a Hindu, you've also talked about how the consciousness of your elders, of your ancestors, have been stifled by the Hindu Brahminical
Yeah.
patriarchal society. So, sir, standing in 2021, this 2021, what is the future? I mean, how can we desanskritize our brain? How can we move forward from
Well,
that?
Arathika, the only way is all our child students, from LKG, in the school level in the villages. Our schools must be very well equipped in the villages, and children must live, study in the villages more and more. And even the urban and rural students must go back to the fields like China and Europe, American children do. Their load of desensitization, engaging with a crop, engaging with labor. So dignity of labor has to be taught in a very, very significant way. So I have that book called Teaching Dignity of Labor,
Yes, sir.
Turning the Pot, Tilling the Land, Navayana book. It is available on Amazon. It's a lesson book with illustrations. And we have to send our children to field work, both from urban and rural areas into agriculture. That is where desensitization, dignifying labor consciousness. So we must have a debate about child education with dignity of labor more and more.
Yes, sir. We look forward to continue a dialogue with you in the near future as well. And due to paucity of time, we could not take every question today. Sincere apologies from the Calcutta Comparatists team. And if you want, you can feel free to drop an email to Professor Kancha Ilaiah Shephard if sir permits. Then, sir, if those participants were unable to speak today, we cannot take every question. They drop a mail to you and continue a dialogue with you if they want.
No, but don't share the mail ID because a lot of mails will come.
No, sir, we're not sharing a mail ID.
Yeah. So they can read my books, and book reading is much better than mail and this and that. So I have 7, 8 books in the market. Some of them are PDFs are available. There are many ways you can download. If you can't buy, those of you can buy. You can buy online. So I am not a Hindu is available in PDF form in various.
Yes.
Of course, Hindu India is available. My novel Untouchable God is not available in that form, but in the book. So many of my books are available, including the Shudras. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank
My
you very much.
website is there, www.kanchailaiah.com. Many of my articles are.
Yes, please go through that website. It's an invaluable treasure to the
Okay.
virtual world. And yes, Pratim, can you please deliver the vote of thanks and we can conclude the lecture?
Yes, thank you, Aratrika. So, on behalf of the team Calcutta Comparatists 1919, I would like to convey our hearty thanks to Professor Kancha Ilaiah Shephard for his excellent lecture today. A big thank you to Professor for sharing your ideas and views on the state of the Dalits and the issues of Hindutva in the context of current time. And I would like to express our sincere gratitude to you, Professor, for responding to us and coming to our forum today. And we are really inspired by your great words. So thank you, and thank you to all our participants for being with us today. So, well, thank you, and good night.
Thank you. A very good night to all of you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And please follow our website, calcom.org, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more such enlightening lectures. Thank you. Bye bye.